Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded here, and since it's a special day, I thought I'll re-examine the number 108. Well, Wednesday, April the 18th, 2018, it's the 108th day of the year, and it's an interesting point. Like 108 is one of these very special, very important numbers, and it also just happens to be one of the days when, another one of these days when the end of the world was supposed to happen. But again, how do you know the world's not going to end when someone predicts it? But anyway, 108. This is I've done some, well, going back way back when I first started the channel, but I'll put the link in the description to this video because it runs for about 44 minutes and 39 seconds, and it's an older one. I should update it, but I'll put that link in the description because I'll go through a whole lot more connections and to show how in ancient architecture, modern architecture, symbols and legends and traditions, how this number 108 is, again, cross time, cross cultures, cross the world. I'll also put this link in the description because of the harmonic numbers. So for instance, 108, 216, 432, 864, 1728, and how these connect, and especially through maths, weights and measures, astronomy, geometry, music as well. So those will be in the description. But we'll come back to this because this is an important feature as well. But 108, for instance, now the origin of the foot has been lost in time. I've repeated this before, but again, this sort of the modern story that the foot was, well, when it was invented, no, it's at the very least 500 BC, but the number of 108 feet used in ancient architecture, temples and monuments just carries through. And you could also, because feet is what we like, feet and inches, what we most commonly deal with, but it's so much 108 stuff. But just when you look at 108 feet, how it appears all across the world. Now, even if they weren't using the foot as we know it, so many, well, everywhere, all cross time, cross cultures, across the world, they built their sacred temples and monuments and structures at this particular dimension. Now, for instance, 108 feet converts to 32.98, I think it is, meters. So essentially 33 meters is 108 feet. But again, the meter is a lot older than what they say it is. There's so much tangible, measurable, testable evidence of it, but, well, the official history, we can't touch that. But again, across England, you'll see like these stones. So it's not just Stonehenge. There are many other circles and like 108 feet. And even, well, for instance, in the hurler stones, even 115 feet. This, again, Mayans, Romans, so many other people use these measures, just get repeated over and over again. But 108 feet in stone circles is, in the random world, this should not happen. If it was not on some sort of standard with some sort of meaning, it wouldn't happen, yet it does. In Chinese tradition, you'll see the use of the number 108 so many different ways in the old measurement system. Yeah, just so many different ways. I've links in the description. We'll go a little bit more into that. It's interesting also that the speed of light, which is, so usually they talk about in seconds, but the speed of light, kilometers per hour, there we see it there, and well, again, above 99.94, I think, anyway, but well above 99.9%, 99% accuracy, well above that. And it's a good rule of thumb. What's the speed of light? 108, and these zeros following. But if we go back to Mohenjo-Daro, so the Great Bath there as well, 180 by 108 feet. Now, 180 feet is 2,160 inches, by the way, but the Mohenjo-Daro foot, so 33 feet was their standard street width, which is 33 Mohenjo-Daro, 33 of our modern feet is 30 Mohenjo-Daro feet, which also I've done other videos in regards to how this beautifully explains the Great Pyramid if you include the sockets around the outside, and that they are essential in finding the proportions of the Earth to the Great Pyramid. The Epic of Gilgamesh, what number do they use when they describe the Ark of Utnapishtim, the original, you could say the original version of the flood, the Noah story? Because just like Noah, he released a raven and a dove, but well, 108 is mentioned in directly in there so many times. But even the units then convert to, well, you get 108 again. But this, of course, will connect to New Jerusalem, especially if you use the King James Version when furlongs begun to be used, and how that converts to, well, for instance, 108,000 Royal Babylonian grains. And again, by definition, this 12 by 12 by 12 cube will give you 108 in so many different ways. And it's 108th day of the year. The facade at Abu Simbel, so this is big Abu Simbel, as it's sometimes called, and the statues are 66 feet. I mentioned that the one furlong, as used to describe New Jerusalem in the King James Version, is 660 feet or 10 chain, and 66 feet here. Little Abu Simbel are 30 feet high statues, but anyway, the facade, 108 feet high. But I must put a little asterisk there because there are a few slightly contradictory ones, but still I thought worth mentioning that because of all the 66 and 33 feet as well. But now if we go over to Central America, again you'll find 108, well I mentioned earlier 115 feet, for instance in the Hurler Stones, and one was 115 and one was 108. Well, the House of the Deer in here as well. Now the famous Kukulkan Pyramid was built on an older pyramid, and as best as I was able to find, that pyramid base was 108 feet. However, for instance, Lamani in Belize, that's 108 feet high, and Pyramid 33 in Tikal as well was, before it was some shenanigans going on there, but originally 108 feet. You can also find it in several mounds as well in North America. Lots of mounds actually have 108 feet, but because of erosion and again there's been changes and people would use the earth for other earthworks as well. So, but 108 feet also in the mounds of North America worth mentioning. But well, because it's earth mounds and what's happened, and there's all erosion plus also interference. But anyway. Also, you can find this in North America as well. But for instance, in Hindu tradition, Vishnu 108 symbols, 108 beads on the Japamala. Jains, Sikhs, and Buddhists and Hindus, 108 is very important. Even 108 sun salutations in yoga, the pressure chakras and the pressure points, 108, very, very important. And also you'll find it in not just modern, but even going back, for instance, the Ellora Cave complex, the most spectacular temple there, 108 feet wide. 108 shrines, for instance, at the Sun Temple in Madeira. In Sri Lanka, 108 feet high, and in Prambanan in Indonesia. But must put an asterisk on that because this was partially rebuilt. So the central one is either 153 or 154, and the two temples on either side 108 feet high. But that could be that the reconstruction did not get the original height exactly correctly. However, it is interesting that these the two main towers on either side of the central tower are 66 feet wide. And if we go back to, because 66 and 33 feet as well, it's not just one number. You'll find these have the same sets, multiple times. And so it's this idea of coincidence, and it's very hard to explain if you have multiple sets of measurements and astronomical alignments and all these repeated features in these apparently separate cultures are apparently developed separately. And well, it's problematic if you want to follow that line. And so, for instance, in Angkor Wat and the surrounding temples, 108, for instance, there are 54 statues on the bridges, so 108 on either side. in Angkor, so we have 108 figures churning the Milky Sea, 54 on one side, 54 on the other, 108 in total. Phnom Penh, we have 108 towers around the original, and it's interesting to note that the way and you had 104 smaller towers, but only 33 of, so from ground level you can only see maximum 33 at one time, and there are 33 guides on Mount Meru back to that 66 and 33 feet thing, which just, again, it's all multiple sets. The same references just keep coming up and up again. It's not just the one, it's always multiples. Also in that same temple, like 108 feet wide as well. So again, just Buddhist. So you'll often, when Buddha died, he had 108 feet, 108 auspicious symbols on each one of his feet, 216 in total. And Japanese Buddhists will ring the bell 108 times for New Year's, whether it's the auspicious symbols on the feet or 108 offering bowls. This is a very important number for them. Buddha asked 108 questions, made 108 statements. The Japa Mala, of course, 108 beads. And again, you'll find 108 stupas, 108 gates, 108 chapels, whether it's the various sects of Buddhism. And even, for instance, as an example of just one of the modern structures in Myanmar, formerly Burma, 324 feet, well, that's 108 yards. There are 108 foot high flagstaff, 108 bow trees, and in these in the ceremonies to inaugurate these and to open up these temples, you'll often find 108 monks will be in the ceremony. Even in a recent, the Boudin Buddhists in Paris, in France, well, they had a 108 feet high statue. But going back to around the Roman era, 108 feet, the Baths of Caracalla, the Pantheon, King Herod built the Royal Stoa, 108 feet wide and high, the largest obelisk in Aksum in Ethiopia, 108 feet long. That's the toppled one, but also yep, weights and able to move these things. Now, no shortage of it in Christian. No, it's just in modern and ancient. It just keeps, and the oldest churches up until the newest cathedrals, 108 feet as a measure, but also symbolically. So very few, like cathedrals, will have 108 columns, especially in the crypt. And it's also very important in Islamic architecture, both the modern and the older. And even in King Khalid Airport in Saudi Arabia, 108 feet wide dome, 33 arches along the Royal Pavilion. 108, 1 to the first, times 2 to the second, times 3 to the third. It's a lovely number across the dimensions, beautiful number in many ways, many ways. It's a Hashad number, so you often see the digital root of 9. Well, it's one of those as well, and defined by Caprica. So if you look up Caprica numbers as well, these just always comes back to these same sets of beautiful numbers as seen in ancient temples, and as modern mathematics is looking into them. And in geometry as well, so whether it's the vesica, the pentagon, pentagram, triangles, squares, octagons, this 108 just keeps appearing again and again. And well, getting back to the pentagon and pentagram and 108 being so important, well, it also relates to the golden number 5, the golden proportion, the divine proportion, golden mean. And intrigue just comes through. Lovely stuff always. Weights and measures as well, it pops up again. So just whether it's Thoth, Hermes, or as the Romans called him, Mercury, the gods of weights and measure, the gods of knowledge and science. And 108 is very important across the scales. And so again, older systems of weights and measure, 108 just keeps reoccurring. It seems it's essentially a standard. And even to the more modern imperial times, for instance, the yardstick, which is 3 feet or 36 inches, well, that converts to 108 grains or barley corn. Like 1 inch is 3 grain, and so yardstick, as in the term, a yardstick is like an expression of measuring truth. Well, 108 occurs in there as well. So older weights and measure systems keep coming back to 108, but well, still in the electronic age, whether it's radio or, for instance, full HD, 1080, even 720, 1440, these are all on the harmonic scale, but FM. So especially in Australia, we have this really nice, especially in AM, the 9 kilohertz separation. So all these really lovely numbers on the AM dial, but also FM from 88, very interesting, but up to 108 megahertz. Pentatonic tuning and this variation, well, Pythagorean tuning also 108, 96, 81, 72, 60. These all again fall on this lovely harmonics chart, but interesting as well. The atomic weight of silver, just a little bit, that is true, but whether it's the connections, but still it's interesting, by the light of a silvery moon, as the old saying goes, which sort of brings us back to this really nice series of connections between Sun, Earth, Moon and Saturn as well. And so, for instance, I think it's even above 99.4, but let's just say the diameter of the Earth, the equatorial diameter, times 108 is the diameter of the Sun. And have I got that? I don't think okay, I didn't actually mark that one down, but 108 times the so 7,920 miles, give or take a fraction, times that by 108, you get the diameter of the Sun above 99.4%, even I think a bit higher than that. If you multiply the diameter of the Sun, which is 86,400, which is 8 times 108, 864, 864,000 miles, diameter of the Sun, times 108, you get the distance from the Sun to the Earth. So there's a nice reciprocating thing going on there between Sun and the Earth. Now if you multiply the diameter of the Moon times 108, you get the exact distance between the Moon to the Earth, and because of the elliptical orbits, there's a slight shifting. If you just use what's very, very close to the average, but in the orbit of the Moon around the Earth times, well, during that time it is 100% correct. And the long foot, so 1.056 feet. Now the long foot, or the Persian foot, there are even some suggestions that the long foot was used in Stonehenge phase 1. The Stonehenge we see now is phase 3 and 4. There were 2 earlier incarnations of Stonehenge, but that seems to appear as well. And the diameter of the Moon is 108,000 long foot, which is 2,160 miles. But the polar diameter of Saturn, again, because it's a gas planet, so the exact number is always going to be, depends on how you define it, but the polar diameter, again above 99%, is 108,000 kilometers, which is the orbital speed of the Earth around the Sun at its faster point. So the Earth travels 108,000 kilometers an hour around the Sun per hour, and so therefore the polar diameter of Saturn is 108, is the speed of the Earth per hour. And it's interesting also, 21,600 kilometers per hour is the speed of Saturn, and the circumference of the Earth is 21,600 nautical miles, so the most you can see is 10,800. Again, just nice connections that goes on. But if you multiply the diameter of the Sun times 1,080, you get the distance from the Sun to Saturn. Multiply the diameter of the Sun times 108, you get the distance from the Sun to the Earth. Speed, distance, proportions of, the relationship of distance between these Sun, Earth, Moon, and Saturn. So it's a very nice, easy system to start to remember a whole bunch of information, unfortunately. So look, I posted this information on a astronomy site a while ago. I didn't include as above, so below. I didn't include any hermetic or any reference like that, but I had my post removed and I was banned from the site because people were just posting pictures of the Hubble pictures, and that's sort of somehow okay. And if people are posting a long string of like a number you can't remember with a long string of decimals, that's all very sciencey, and that's okay. But if you say, well, have a look at this 108, the measurement systems, this is not welcome by them. You know, unfortunately, these, if it's too nice and clean for them, they don't want to know it. You know, to be sciencey, you have to have a long string of numbers that no one can remember, and yeah. But if you post, you know, it's the equivalent of posting cat pictures. If I put up a bunch of Hubble pictures with no information, that's acceptable. If you post something with information, even though you do not do any Hermeticism reference or anything like that, well, that's deemed not worthy. Astronomical peer-reviewed papers will even, many of them will even refuse. It's illegal to include references to Bode's law as one example. It's also, well, so the diameter of the moon, 21,600, that's 1,080 miles. Nice connection there. So the diameter of the moon, 2,160 miles. Orbital speed of Saturn, 21,600 kilometers. The circumference of the Earth in nautical miles, by definition, 21,600 miles. So 108 times 2 is 216. So whether it's 108, 216, 432, 864, 1728, this scale just encompasses so much information. And because it's accessible, it's not deemed appropriate, I suppose. It's also interesting that if you map out the conjunctions of Venus and Earth, so it creates this pentagon, pentagram pattern, and again, the defining angles of this is 108 degrees, and the distance between Venus to the Earth, 108,000 kilometers as well. So a nice little connection there as well, and there are several others as well. But again, I'll put some links in the description. But 108 really is a thing. There'll be just links in the description to related videos, and I do this because today is the 108th day of the year, and it is not the end of the world. So it's worth keeping in mind. But yeah, links in the description. I hope you enjoyed and have a good one. 108, it's a thing.